Welcome to the pathology lecture. So we are continuing with the chapter of inflammation and healing. Today we are dealing with the part 5. So till now we have dealt with inflammation, its definition, causes, signs and types. Then we have dealt with acute inflammation where we have studied about vascular events and cellular events, and we have seen the animation related to inflammation in part 4. So today we are going further with rest of the parts of acute inflammation, that are chemical mediators of inflammation, inflammatory cells, morphological types of acute inflammation with example, what are the systemic effects of acute inflammation, where we are knowing about pyrexia. And lastly, to end up with the acute inflammation, we are talking about outcomes of acute inflammation. So, starting today with our lecture on chemical mediators of inflammation. So, these chemical mediators of inflammation, also called as permeability factors or endogenous mediators of increased vascular permeability. These are a large and increasing number of endogenous compounds which can enhance vascular permeability. So, in last part 4 of inflammation and healing, you must be seen we are talking something about mediators like histamine, cytokinin and all. So, these mediators help to regulate the acute inflammation, leading with each mediator has its own specific action during the inflammatory processes, right? So we are trying to know different kinds of chemical mediators which influence the inflammatory processes. The substances acting as chemical mediators of inflammation may be released from the cell, the plasma, or damaged tissue itself. They are broadly classified into two groups. So these chemical mediators are divided into two groups depend upon their origin. Right. So sorry. First one, the mediator which are released by the cells, they are called as a cell-derived mediators. And second, the mediators originated from plasma, they are called as a plasma-derived mediators. Going further, some of the examples of chemical mediators I have listed down for your better understanding. Further, we are going in detail about it. What are the sources and what are the functions of it? Okay. So first one, that is cell-derived mediators. They are vasoactive amines, arachidonic acid metabolites. Then we have lysosomal components, platelet activating factor, cytokinin, and free radicals. Next, second one, those are plasma derived mediators. They are products of the kinase system, the clotting system, the fibrolytic system, and lastly the complement systems. Moving further with the details of what are the sources of cell derived and plasma derived, what are the mediators, and what are the main action of those mediators. Going to the first one, that is cell derived. The sources for cell derived are mast cells, basophils, platelets, which secrete histamine as a mediator, and its main action is increase vascular permeability. Next cell derived is source is platelets itself, which secrete serotonin as a mediator, which also has the main function as increase vascular permeability. Next, cell-derived source is inflammatory cells. So these gives rise to a number of mediators. First one is prostaglandins, which has action as a vasodilatation. Next we have luteokinins, which helps in increase permeability. Lysosomal enzymes, which main action has tissue damage. Platelet activating factor, which increases the vascular permeability. Next mediator we have is a cytokines, which has the main action of giving a pyrexia, that is fever. And last cell-derived chemical mediator is nitric oxide and oxygen metabolites, which has a main action as a tissue damage. So these are cell derived. Then moving to the next one, that is a plasma derived. So they are products of clotting and fibrinolytic system, that is fibrin splitting products. All the plasma derived help in increase vascular permeability, the main action of all the plasma derived mediators. Canine system, we have canine, bradykinin. Then complementary system, we have anaphylatoxin. They are C3A, C4A, C3B, C5B, and CG. So these are the chemical mediators. Moving in little more details of chemical mediators, that is first one is the histamine. The source, as we know, that mast cells, basophils, and platelets. So main action we have seen, that is vasodilatation, increased vascular permeability, and endothelial activation. Prostaglandin, the sources are mast cells and leukocytes. They help in vasodilatation. Pain also contribute for fever. Leukotrienes, the source is mast cells, leukocytes, and the main action is increase vascular permeability. Chemotaxis, leukocyte adhesion and activation. Next we have cytokines, TNF, IL-1 and IL-6. The source, macrophages, endothelial cells and mast cells. The action is, the local action it has is endothelial activation, it is expression of the adhesion molecule, and systemic action it has is a pyrexia, that is fever, that is metabolic abnormalities, hypotension and shock. The chemokinase source is leukocytes and activated macrophages. The action is chemotaxis, leukocyte activation. Platelet activating factors, the main source is leukocyte and mast cells. The action is vasodilatation, increased vascular permeability, and leukocyte adhesion, chemotaxis, degranulation, and oxidative burst. Next we have the complement, the mediator. The source is plasma produced in liver. The action is leukocyte, chemotaxis, and activation, direct target killing, and vasodilatation. The canins, the source is plasma produced in liver again. The action they are having is increased vascular permeability, smooth muscle contraction, vasodilatation, and contributing of pain. So these are different chemical mediators with their source and the action. Moving for the next point, that is inflammatory cells. What do you mean by inflammatory cells? The cells which participating in acute and chronic inflammation are circulating leukocytes, plasma cells, and tissue macrophages. So these are called as inflammatory cells. So those cells which participate in acute as well as chronic inflammation, those are leukocytes, plasma cells, and tissue macrophages. So these are known as the inflammatory cells. Moving for what are the different inflammatory cells, what are the features they are having, and what exactly they do. So this is a chart of inflammatory cells. Just go through it once. Right? This is already you have studied in your first year BHMS physiology when we are talking of a chapter of blood, right? So it is a just a rush up of that particular thing. Next, moving for factors determining variations in inflammatory responses. So what are the factors which determine variation in the inflammatory responses, right? So acute inflammation is typically characterized by vascular and cellular event, which already we have dealt with immigration of neutrophilic leukocyte. Not all examples of acute inflammation shows infiltration by neutrophils. So all the signs may not be seeing the infiltration of neutrophils in acute inflammation. Right? On the other hand, some chronic inflammatory conditions are characterized by neutrophilic infiltration. So even some of the chronic inflammation we can see neutrophilic infiltration. So now we are trying to know what are those factors which determines variation in inflammatory responses, where we can find these all variations. So the variation in inflammatory responses depend upon the following factors which I noted down. One is factors involving the organisms, factors involving the host, and type of exudation. So these three factors are giving rise to variation in the inflammatory reactions. First one, that factor involving the organism. What are those factors? Number one, type of injury and infection. What type of injury we are having and what type of infection we are having, right? Number two, what is the virulence of that particular organism? The dose of organism, the portal of entry of organism, and product of organism. So these are five factors where it is contributing in the variation in the inflammatory reactions. If suppose the virulence is less, the dose is less, then the effect is less. So we can find some of the variations. The portal of entry, if it is direct contact, we can see the reactions are more. If it is indirect contact, the exposure is less, definitely it is having less of inflammatory reactions. Next factor, we are having factors involving the host. So here, host, that is us, right? What exactly the responses it gives. Number one, systemic disease. Already a person is having systemic diseases, then definitely the reaction comes is different to the inflammation, because already we have antibody antigen with us, where first defense mechanism may not have that much of exposure. Suppose some of the drastical disorders are there in already in a person where our immune system is exhausted because fighting against them, and our inflammatory process comes. Your body may not react so efficiently to the infection, and it fails, where we see a different set of inflammatory reaction. Next, we have immune status of host. That's what I'm talking of. If already the person is immune compromised, so their reactions are different. Next, we have congenital neutrophilic defect. Here, defect already it is there in the neutrophils. It is a congenital one, so reactions will be poorer or a different. A person is having leukopenia. Leukocyte count is already less. In that case, the reaction which has to be there in inflammation it will not be there. You can't see all the reactions, the vascular as well as cellular. Next, we have site or type of tissue involved. Definitely. So, last factor we have seen the site and type also gives rise to some of the influencing factors. Next, local host response or local host factor. So, locally the host how it responds is same as site of tissue involved, right? So, if it is a direct involvement is there, then definitely the reactions are more. If it is indirect one, the reactions are less. The site of responses also gives rise to some of the factors, right, that has to be understood. Just for example, host, local host response. So suppose there is a ischemia, presence of foreign bodies and chemical cause, necrosis and is there, it may cause more harm to the factors, right? In case of site or type of tissue involvement, the lungs has a loose texture and compared to the bones. Thus, both tissues react differently to the acute inflammation, right? So, we can see different set of changes in acute as well as chronic inflammation depend upon the site of involvement is there. Next, moving for the type of exudation, right? So, what type of exudation is there, right? It also gives a variation in acute responses. Number one, if it is a serous one, if the exudate is a serous one, so here the, it resembles to the serum or is a watery one. For example, in case of pleural effusion, in tuberculosis, in blister formation, in the burn, right? Next, we have fibrinous. If exudate is a fibrinous, in examples like where in pneumococcal or rheumatic pericarditis. Number third, we have purulent or suppurative exudate, where the formation of creamy pus is there with pyogenic bacteria, like in case of abscesses in acute appendicitis. Next, we have is hemorrhagic, name itself suggests, where it has a hemorrhage. Commonly, we see in acute hemorrhagic pneumonia and in influenza. Right. Number five, we have a catral, where the surface of inflammation of an epithelial produced, right? For example, in case of common cold, we can see such responses. So here the variations takes place depend upon the type of exudation. Fine. So moving for the next part, that is morphological types of acute inflammation. So the acute inflammation morphologically they have divided into 5 types. One is pseudomembranous inflammation. Next, the ulcer, suppuration or called as abscess formation, cellulitis, and last one is a bacterial infection of the blood. Going one by one. Next, first one, that is pseudomembranous inflammation. The name itself suggests it is a formation of a false membrane, right? So it is an inflammatory response of a mucous surface, oral, respiratory, or bowel to toxins of diphtheria or irritant gases. As a result of denudation of epithelium, plasma exudates on the surface where it coagulates and together with necrosed epithelium forms a form false membrane. Pseudo is false, right? So it forms a false membrane at that particular point. So you must be heard of diphtheria, right? It forms a false membrane, right? By that it causes the inflammatory reaction. Next we have is the ulcers, second one, right? Ulcers are local defect on the surface of an organ produced by inflammation. So it produces one defect on the surface of the organ. Right? Common sites of ulceration are the stomach, duodenum, intestinal ulcers in typhoid fever, intestinal tuberculosis, bacillary and amoebic dysentery, ulcers of legs due to varicose, etc. So you must be studied about when you are dealing with the entomobacteriality, right? We have amoebic ulcer, right? So this gives rise to ulcer formation in the inflammation. Next we have in acute stages there is an inflammation by polymorph with vasodilatation, while long-standing ulcers develop infiltration by lymphocytes, plasma cells, and macrophages with associated fibroblastic proliferation and scarring. Going for the next, that is suppuration, also known as a abscess formation. When acute bacterial infection is accompanied by intense neutrophilic infiltration in the inflamed tissue, it results in tissue necrosis. So whenever there is a acute bacterial infection is there and there is an intense neutrophilic infiltration is there, so this inflamed tissue forms a tissue necrosis and a cavity is formed which is called as an abscess, and it contains a purulent exudate or also called as a pus, right? So this formation of abscess is known as suppuration. The process of formation of abscess is called as a suppuration, and the bacteria is cause suppuration is called as pyogenic. Okay, those who cause the suppuration is called as a pyogenic. Moving to the fourth morphological factor or type of acute inflammation, that is cellulitis. It is a diffuse inflammation of soft tissue resulting from spreading effect of substances like hyaluronidase released by some bacteria. So this is nothing but the inflammation of soft tissue. It's called as a cellulitis. And the last one, this is bacterial infection of the blood. This includes three conditions. One is bacteremia, septicemia, and pyemia. So bacteremia is defined as presence of small number of bacteria in the blood which do not multiply significantly. This is called as a bacterium. They are commonly not detected by the direct microscope. We can't see in the direct microscope. Next is septicemia. It means presence of rapidly multiplying highly pathogenic bacteria in the blood. So in bacteremia we can't see multiplication. In septicemia we are seeing the multiplication of bacteria. For example, pyogenic cocci, septicemia is generally accompanied by systemic effect like toxemia, multiply small hemorrhages, neutrophilic leukocytosis, and disseminated intravascular coagulation, that is DIC. Next we have is pyemia, is the dissemination of small septic thrombi in the blood which cause their effect at the site where they are lodged. This can result in pyemic abscess or septic influx. So this is all about morphological types of acute inflammation. Moving for the next part, that is systemic effects of acute inflammation. What exactly the acute inflammation do at systemic level? The account of acute inflammation give up to now above is based on local tissue responses. So whatever the local tissue responses are, they play a major role for systemic effects. So those systemic effects are fever, lymphocytosis, lymphangitis, lymphadenitis, and shock. As per your syllabus, we are going to deal with only one part, that is pyrexia, or also known as fever. What exactly pyrexia means? What is the definition of pyrexia? It is characterized by elevation of body temperature, usually by 1 degree to 4 degree centigrade, is one of the most prominent manifestation of the acute phase response, especially when inflammation is associated with infection. So whenever the inflammation is associated with infection, we can see this pyrexia in prominently. Okay, so those substances which induce pyrexia or fever is called as a pyogens. So what is the pathogenesis? How exactly the process of sorry pyrexia occurs? The increase in body temperature is usually by prostaglandin and are produced in the vascular and perivascular cells of the hypothalamus. So it is mainly because of the prostaglandin which is produced in the hypothalamus. Next, the bacteria products such as LPS, called as exogenous pyogens, stimulate leukocyte to release cytokinin. So cytokinin plays a major role in pyrexia, as IL-1 and TNF, called endogenous pyogens, that increase the enzymes that converts alkydonic acid into prostaglandins. So next, in the hypothalamus, the prostaglandin, especially PGE2, stimulate the production of neurotransmitters that reset the temperature set point at a higher level. So it stimulates prostaglandin, they stimulate neurotransmitter where the temperature set point is increased to the higher level. The NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, include aspirin, reduce fever by inhibiting prostaglandin synthesis. So those who are allopathic drugs, which we call as anti-hemorrhagic, antipyretic drugs, they directly act on prostaglandin synthesis. They stop it and they reduce the fever. So what are the outcomes? The last part of this lecture, what are the outcomes of acute inflammation? The acute inflammation may land up somewhere. So what are those? What are the outcomes? So acute inflammation, etiological agent removed. Suppose if the etiological, the causes are removed, it goes for no tissue loss. That is, it goes for resolution. It may resolve itself if the etiological agents are reduced. Suppose the etiological agents are removed, but there is a amount of tissue loss is there, then it will go for healing by fibrosis, or it will go for regeneration, where a tissue is removed by a newer tissue, a replace, not removed, it is replaced by newer tissue, that is regeneration, or it will go for a healing process, a repair process by fibrosis when etiological agents are removed. Suppose the etiological agents are persistent, right? If the etiological agents are persist, it persists, and there is a discharge of persist there, then it will end up into process or a condition called as a separation. The acute inflammation will end up in separation. If suppose there is no separation, or there is a nothing is there, and the etiological agent is persist, then it will end up in a condition of chronic inflammation. Here the acute inflammation is going into chronic inflammation. Understood? So these are the 5 outcomes of inflammation. One is the acute inflammation goes in resolution, then it can land up in healing process, or there is a regeneration takes place, or it will form the suppuration, or the chronic inflammation land up in the the acute inflammation land up in the chronic inflammation. So this is the end of part 5, where we are ending with the acute inflammation. If you have any doubts, please post it in Google Classroom or WhatsApp group, or personally you can contact me directly on WhatsApp group, or you can call and ask your doubts if you have anything, right? So this is ending with inflammation and healing chapter part 5, where we are ending with the acute inflammation. Thank you.